In this video exercise, you're going to learn how to create an HTML form. We're here in Dreamweaver, and I'm going to be adding my form to my contact page. So here are my web folders, and if I wanted to do it from the files library, I click on the index, double click to open it. Alright, so I've got some placeholder content in here already. And I can write some things here to contact the artist, send an email to, we'll do artist@philo.com. That actually doesn't work, so don't try it. It won't go anywhere. Or call 777. Alright, so this could always be a form of doing a contact. And then if you wanted to make these links, you can highlight it. Make sure your properties window is open. And then you should see a properties window like that. And then you can put the link down here. And I'm going to put mail to, that just happens to be the shortcut for adding an email address to a hypertext link. Alright, and I would add that as a link. So you can see that as an href, it puts in mail to artist@philo.com. Over here in the phone number, I'll highlight the phone number, and I'll also create a link. This one will be tell : and then 777, no hyphens when you do the phone number. So it adds a href tag that looks like this. And that would work. People could click on those. This would open up their email program, and this would dial a phone if they were on a phone-enabled device when they were calling. Other things we might add our address. By the way, if you want to do a single line return, notice I'm doing this up in design view. To add a single line return, you can add shift return, and it adds the break. Notice that it adds the break for you. And then we would add something, whatever you want for a street address here. We can manually add the break again. Then you'd have city, state, and a zip code. Alright, so you could have that so far. But maybe you want to do a little bit more than that. Or complete and submit the online form. Okay, so we really just got paragraph tags at this point. But here's where we can insert our form. So I use the insert tool for this. Again, you can do it from the main menu up here. If you use the window, we're going to switch this to form, this little toggle menu. And the very first thing you have to have is a form. So it puts open and close tags for your form already in the window. I'm going to go ahead and give myself a line return. And for this, I'm gonna actually add several paragraphs before I start adding form fields, and you'll see why later, how this helps out. There's different ways to do this. Some people may not like the way I'm doing this, but well, we should be all right. And so I'm going to put my cursor in between the first paragraph tag. And then I'm going to come up over here to my form items. And the first thing I can do is just choose a text field. Alright, so I'm just going to choose text. And you can see that it puts in an input type for text. Alright. If I come up here to my form, I can click on this field and it'll be highlighted. Now I'm definitely going to use some things over here in the properties window to let it write some more code for me. For instance, for the text field name, I'm going to just call it name. I'm not going to apply a class yet. All right. We do want to add, let's see here, what else do we want to add here? We could add a max length here. Maybe we don't want them to have more than 100 characters for the number of characters they can enter for the name. We may also want to make it required, so we'll add a check mark. So you'll notice that it puts in a tag for input, and then it has all these attributes that you can assign for the attribute. Right now it's got a name, it's also got an ID called name, and it lets you know that it's text. Let's see, I wonder if we actually want a text box. I think text is gonna work. Just making sure that was the right. You got text area, which is different and bigger. I think this will work. So this will be type text. Maybe later we'll add a class and call it text box. Okay, but one thing we're gonna want before that is a label. So I'm gonna put in a label for this. And let's see, does this let me put the label here? I'm just gonna check this real quick. No, that just gave it a title and we didn't need that. So let's get rid of that. All right, what I'm gonna wanna do here is I'm gonna hand code this so the Dreamweaver's not gonna add it for me. I'm not seeing, at least I'm not seeing, oh, there's label. So let's add a label here. I don't know why it's the last one, but it puts in the label tags for us. We can refresh the properties on the label. And let's see, for here, do we want to give it a name? I don't know if it gives us a name. This is a label for name. There we go. So with this highlighted, we're going to choose for and make sure that it's for the name. So this is really key right here to have this. That way it knows that you're associating it with this text box. I mean, even though they're right next to each other, that doesn't necessarily mean it's associated yet. And then in between, we're just going to type in name. We'll do asterisk and then a colon. The reason why I did an asterisk is because I want people to know it's required. So I could come back up here and say that required is what that asterisk means. Just sort of gives them some information on how that works. All right, so there we go. We have our first form field and we have our first label for it. Let's go to our next paragraph tag and let's do that again. We're going to add another text field. And this time I'm going to choose email. So it's going to change the type. All right, and then we're going to refresh the properties. Make sure I choose the element. All right, we're going to name this email. And let's see here, max size, again, we could limit this to 100 characters. We'll also make this one required. And let's see, what else can we add here? Autocomplete multiple. I think that's about all we're gonna need for that. Okay, so that finishes that. And then once again, before that input, we're gonna add the label. I'll refresh that. Make sure you're on the label list. And I'm trying to go back and forth. So it's a little bit tricky here. Trying to go back and forth between the label. I'm trying to get it so that it comes up with the for part. There it is. It's like went back and forth. This time I'm choosing email. You could always hand code this in as well. And then in here, we'll put email with an asterisk and a colon. All right, so this is what it's looking like so far. Let's put a list item in next. And we might need another paragraph. Let's go ahead and add another paragraph. All right, now we're going to put in a list. And a list lets them choose from a couple of different options. And so in the Dreamweaver, it's going to be called the select tool or select button. So it's going to choose the select. And now we refresh this, and now this thing works a little bit differently because we got to create list values for it. But let's give it a name first, and we'll just give it identity. That's what I'm calling it, because we're going to ask people who are they. Let's see here. Next is we're going to create our list values. All right, we get a little pop-up window, and you're going to have a first option. And let's see, for the label item, we're going to have just a couple dashes, and you're going to put in please select. So that's the label, that's what it's going to show, and then we need to give it a value, and they did not select. To create a new list item, we'll click the little plus button. So we got the little plus button, and we're going to say I am a comic artist. And then the value that it's going to return is comic artist. So essentially the label is what they see. When it gets submitted, this is the information that is sent. So it can be sent, and sometimes it can be collected in the form of an email. Sometimes this can get saved into a database. Let's create a few more of these. A comic fan. I think you're getting the idea of how this works. A comic buyer. And let's do one more. We'll just do someone else. And you can go back and edit these if you need to. And we'll put someone else. All right, so you give them a good set of options, and then you hit OK. And then you'll notice that Dreamweaver puts in all of the option tags for you for your form, or for that form field. So now when somebody clicks on it, I think I have to be in live view. Let's go ahead and save this and just see what that looks like. We'll go to our contact page. So we have a name field. I could start typing, an email field, and I got a drop-down list. All right, let's do a larger message box next. We're going to come to our next paragraph tag. I wonder if I need, am I going to need another paragraph tag? I'm probably going to need another one. Let's go ahead and add another one. If I don't need it, I can get rid of it. All right, and then this one, I'm going to choose something different. I am going to choose, I'm looking for the text area. There it is, text area. Go ahead and refresh that. And we'll just call this, we'll name this form field a message. And we can give it a max length. Maybe we want to limit them to 1,000 characters this time. And we can go ahead and make it required again. We'll come back to this area. Now I'm going to add a label for that. And there's my code. I wish it would show me the label option. There we go. Label for message. And we'll type in message asterisk colon. And we get a little message area. Now we can do a few more things with the message area. You can decide how tall you want this to be. So let's make it pretty tall. Let's make it 8 rows tall. And that's probably the only other thing I need to add to it. So it gives it a little bit of height. Now we got some things going on here. We'll fix these here pretty soon. So don't worry about that. And let's do, oh, we got another cool thing we can do. I'm going to do another paragraph tags. Let's do a checkbox. And let's make sure it's an anti-spam kind of thing. So we'll do a checkbox as the next thing we input. Refresh the properties. And with this checkbox, we'll click required. And we don't want it checked by default. You could have it checked by default. We're going to leave it unchecked. So this is sort of our anti-spam ID. So we're hoping that a spam robot can't check the checkbox. And we can write something after this. Why, yes, I am. I'll show you why we do that, because we're going to add a label in front of it. So where's our checkbox? Here's our checkbox. And we're going to add a label for our checkbox next. Refresh this, and we're going to make this for the anti-spam. And this label is going to be Are You Human? Sort of like an anti-spam question. So we want them to click this checkbox to say that yes, I am yes, I am human. Maybe we don't need we'll just go, Are you human? And then last thing we're going to do here is we got one last paragraph. Oops, right here. We got a paragraph, and we need to have a submit button. And so that's right up here. Let's see, anything we have to put on with our submit button. We'll give it a name, submit. Form action. Yeah, this is where you would need to work with a developer to know what the form action is and what kind of things. We won't worry about actually getting our form to work or do anything, because you would have to set all of these things just so there would be a very specific form action and a very, and more often than not the form method is going to be post, but this form action would be much more specific on what it does with that. And you may have to give it a different value than just submit. So depending on the web hosting company you're using, that's going to determine how that's going to work. So there isn't necessarily one way for an email form to work for all web hosting services. Okay, let's save that and let's go take a look. And there we go. And if we had coded everything for an actual email submit with our hosting company, and again, like I said, that varies per person. Oh, it looks like I'm missing a label right here. Let's go back and fix that label for the list. So we didn't do a label for the list. Let's do that. So let's enter a label. And then let's see, we're going to ask I am with a colon. Refresh that. Gotta go back and forth. There we go. Seems like I just have to click it several times till I get this for window. And then we want to choose identity for the label. All right, there we go. Let's look at it one more time. So you got a name, an email, I am. They can select, they can type a message in here, and they can click this to make sure Because if this isn't clicked, it won't submit. So it's a very, very simple anti-spam thing. You're hoping that there are robots out there that try to auto-submit these forms, and they just send junk after junk after junk. So there are ways to block them with an anti-spam. This would be a very simple anti-spam. The more sophisticated ones know how to actually check your checkboxes. So that won't hold those back, but it might hold some back. And then once somebody had it all done, they could hit submit. Of course, I just tried to submit. It said fill out this field. That's because it's required. All right, so there you go. You got a contact form. In our next video, we're going to make this look a little bit prettier.